gentleman who you're fighting walks out and kind of gets in your face.
Yeah.
And what really stuck out to me was the non-expression of, okay, like this doesn't faze you. You're just like, all right, cool, that's what you're doing. And then you go to business. Mm-hmm. But when that happens, what are you thinking when that dude is getting that close to your face? Because I can't read you when that happened.
I'm thinking, I got something for you. I'm going to lay the hammer down on you. It's called Fudoshin. It's an immovable spirit. It's like a concept in like Zen Buddhism, and like it's applicable to the martial arts. It's just basically just having one center of your, like a center of like your consciousness, and it like it's right here, like underneath your navel. It's like a breathing technique, essentially, you know? And just knowing that that is so centered that there's nothing that can move you from your goal.
What's up, everybody? It is your friendly neighborhood BJJ podcaster, Rafa Esparza, coming to you with another great installment of the Grappling Hour. We have a guest. We'll talk about him in a second. Back to me. I want to tell you guys this. If you are not a member of the Grappling Hour community, it would mean a lot to me if you go on over to HY.PAGE/Grappling Hour and you become a member. For $5 a month, you could see these interviews 30 days before anybody else. And for a few extra dollars, maybe, just maybe, you could see some tape studies, episodes that aren't available anywhere else. And perhaps, if we're so nice, I guess it depends on how this interview goes, a certain guest may show you how he knocked out a certain opponent. I'm just saying, I can't promise you what the premium tier holds. It's a mystery. It's as advertised. We'll see what we do. Also, you can like, share, and subscribe, and you can join us on Discord at Grappling Hour. All right, let's talk about our guest. So, unbeknownst to our guest, I have covered many fights here in Southern California. I have seen his work in many different formats. I've seen him at Fighters Reps. I've seen him fight on just about every card here in SoCal. But most recently, I saw him over at the Up Next Fighting organization. And I wish there was more time I had to take photos. But he kind of made short work of his opponent and did it in such an outstanding way. I said, you know what? It's time that we actually meet in person, so that way I can give you your flowers in person, give you your props. But today we are joined by the strong, the powerful, the heavily mustachioed one, Diego Guts Perez. How are you doing, sir?
Chilling, man. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is a pleasure, dude. I have to ask, facial hair to facial hair, this is top tier.
Appreciate
when
you,
did
man.
you grow this mustache out, sir?
Well, I was born with it, actually. You know, it's just kind of I've had a beard, you know, off and on since I was maybe like 12, 13. I started shaving when I was like right around 11 or 12, you know,
okay.
So my first shave, you know, it's Hispanic genes. But yeah, just kind of every once in a while I just get the urge to just have the mustache, and I think it's just sort of like my ancestral look, you know.
Do you do the full, or do you just do this?
Oh, I'll just do this sometimes, you know, but I'll grow the full beard every once in a while. Okay. Usually when I fight, I go for a full battle beard, you know, like, and I'll let it grow out a little bit, so I look kind of like like an ancient kind of, you know, like a Middle Eastern warrior or something, you know, but sometimes I get the urge to be extremely Hispanic, so.
Bro, good on you, because it looks very, very solid. I have to be honest. Like, I was taking a look at it up front, and I was like, I wonder how it's going to be. But, you know, when you're taking photos of it, it photographs well, dude. So
yeah.
Props to you. I have a question, though. When is the difference between you going clean shaven? Do you ever go clean shaven, and what is the kind of circumstances in which you might?
I go clean shaven maybe like once a year, and then I'll just be like, oh, I'm gonna mix it up a little bit, you know. I'm gonna see what I look like this time. And every single time I do it, I forget how much space I have between my upper lip and my nose. So I just get so weirded out by seeing my entire face. You know what I mean? I'm just like, ugh, God, it's disgusting. So instantly just grow it back as quickly as possible.
Here's what I need to tell you, which is I am heavily reliant on this. Like, if I don't have this, you probably don't recognize me.
Yeah.
But, and my wife for sure is like, no, we keep this.
Yeah.
All right, if that's what the wife says, that's what we do. But you, sir, you have the ability to do all. Like, you look normal without it. You look cool with it.
Yeah.
And then with the full beard, if that's a fight camp beard, you get the full experience of being like, I just had my Rocky training session.
Yeah.
I'm going to get my montage on real quick, and now I'm fighting. So
pretty much.
It's a very versatile look that you are able to pull off here.
Facial hair. It's a good thing to have, dude.
All right, let's get into this, which is I talked to you off air when we were exchanging things, and you were surprised that I knew you were on Bloodsport. Now, for those who aren't in the know, Bloodsport, promoted by Josh Barnett, War Master, a long, long time ago, a certain babyface, a long-time catch wrestling enthusiast. Now, he puts these things together, and as a pro wrestling fan, I was wondering, how did you get involved in that event?
Well, Josh is actually my coach. He's more or less my sensei. And him and I have been training at CMMA together for like some time. And, you know, we have like a lot of, I guess, interests in common, I guess you could say. You know, we like share a lot of like the same approach to, I guess, like martial arts or maybe just like life in general. So he was putting on this Bloodsport event, and I just like didn't have anything coming up. This is pretty much like over the pandemic, you know, so there weren't like really any fight events happening. So he asked me if I wanted to partake and have a couple matches, and I was like, hell yeah, man, let's give it a shot, you know?
Okay, now here's why I say you have such a all over the place career, because not many people have fighters rep. So it's kickboxing, your MMA, your catch wrestling.
Yep.
And then that's its own other category. So were you able to fulfill any dreams of being a pro wrestler? Because some people who become fighters start off with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, obviously, I think everybody that's into MMA, like at some point in their life, had some sort of fascination with pro wrestling. Like, you know, when I was a kid, I was in love with it, and you know, as an adult now, I've definitely kept up with it a little bit, and you know, I've always been really interested in sort of like the provenance of mixed martial arts. You know, so like pancrase, like you know, New Japan is like a new like example of that. Yeah, like I feel like what we consider mixed martial arts today, it all kind of flowed down. Obviously, there's like Vale-Tudo, like, you know, in Brazil, and there was like the early UFCs, but like you're having like full rules mixed matches like in the early 80s, like mid 80s over there in Japan. And those guys are really ahead of their time in terms of grappling ability too. So that was kind of more or less like the two matches that I had actually. One of them got cut, but the match that I had was against this dude, Gil Guardado, who is also like a fellow MMA fighter, and it was more or less sort of like a pancrase style, like almost live sparring match.
Yeah, I noticed that because you guys, if you come from a different background, it seems like they try to tailor it to what you're best at. So in that particular one, you don't have to pick that up. Thank you. It's very kind of you. That's how you know he's a very kind guest. But it seems like they're like, okay, this is, you guys fight. Let's kind of make it more based in that. And then you guys kind of have like what would look like a sparring match. Yeah. And then you'll see a little bit later, there might be a little bit more heightened version of a jiu-jitsu round or a heightened version of a pro wrestling round under certain parameters.
A certain rule set,
Yeah, so when I see those things, you know, we do a whole thing called WWE BJJ. We've been doing it for years. And the weird part is people are like, oh, do you like Josh? And I was like, well, I've met him a few times and we're very friendly. But it was one of those things where I go, if you're really going to do any kind of combination of the two, he's got to be one of the leading experts at this. And the fact that you can take him seriously as a fighter, and I've covered his fights. I've covered some of those UFC fights, and it's deadly serious. But he's still cutting a good promo in those like tables. Like he's still there telling you good stories and making you laugh. But then you see him at like a New Japan thing where he's a play-by-play commentator, and he's getting involved and kind of like yelling in the match, and you go, is he more serious here? Like, holy shit, he holds so well at that world where I go, you belong here, man. Like, every time I see him doing
Josh is at least as serious about pro wrestling as he is about mixed martial arts and committing violence on another person, you know? I mean, obviously pro wrestling, like, there's like an element of like, sort of like acting. There's like whole drama that gets involved. Like, there's like a back and forth. There's a flow of like, what it is that you're trying to achieve in pro wrestling. But in terms of like physical injury and like the seriousness of the sport and like how well trained you have to be at least as good an athlete to be a pro wrestler as you have to be a mixed martial artist. It's just different goals.
And I think one of the biggest differences is in fighting, you spend so much of your time not showing that you're hurt. but then you have to communicate that in a pro wrestling world where when it is heightened, you know, I think Kurt Angle used to say this very, very profusely, where he's like, dude, I was a wrestler. You ate pain. You're not supposed to show pain. And the first day you get to WWE, they're like, why aren't you selling this better?
Yeah.
And he's just like, okay, it's going to take a minute. I'm going to have to relearn what I already knew.
Yeah.
And so having to do that. But what is nice about this is because it's void of certain rules or conventions, it just exists in its own space. So I would ask a couple follow-ups here. One, not that you got to have a finisher, but if you were a pro wrestler, did you have a finisher that was your finisher?
I would probably do a variation of the Sweet Chin music.
Very fitting. Very fitting if you've seen this man's work. Because as I was like doing my research, I go, all right, he's an HBK stan. Got it. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Nerd.
Just a sexy boy, you know what I'm saying? Got into that sexy shot.
Hey, listen, the issue that I was hoping we might have to avoid here is I'm a Brett guy.
You're a Brett guy?
Oh, huge Brett guy.
Sucks for you, dude.
Hey,
Montreal
man.
Screwjob, dude. But you know what? Another great technical wrestler. Him and his brother.
Here's the thing. When you grew up and you were in that era, you were definitely like, you can't be both, right?
Yeah.
You have to be like, no, pick a side.
Yeah.
And Brett was just like, oh. And I later realized that watching Brett's technicality probably was the like starting steps to me doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, how does he do that?
Yeah.
And then I started looking at it, and I think Brett's best sell was the fact that he was a great storyteller.
Yeah.
So that you were very clear where the story was going in the ring with him. And then you just have the GOAT of in-ring dynamic kind of performing, which is HBK. So as I've gotten older, I've been like, they're both greats. They're just amazing at what they do. But it is the quickest way that I have become friends or enemies with people. So I wanted to avoid becoming enemies with a guy who I've seen get a sick KO.
Yeah, I mean, so pro wrestling is kind of like, it has a sort of like mythical quality to it, you know? There's like, you identify like so strongly with these like each individual like characters that you see presented on a screen. And it's like somebody to like be like your guy, like in like these like kind of like strange, like dramatic, like, you know, bizarre storylines. And it's like very dreamlike, you know?
Yeah.
And I think MMA like also has that, like you identify extremely strongly with like one fighter or the other fighter. But there's like, I don't know, it's like you like live vicariously through like this like individual, you know what I mean? And like their like quest to the top, like, I don't know. Who was that one guy like Daniel
Daniel Bryan.
Daniel Bryan.
Bryan
you know what I mean?
Danielson.
Yeah,
now.
Bryan Danielson. Yeah. He like I feel like people just like identified with like his everyman, like fucking like, you know, like his like need to like become like the best version of himself, you know? And like that, the championship belt is like a symbol of like your dedication, you know? And I think that's true of like both martial art or mixed martial arts and like pro wrestling, you know?
Yeah, you do get caught up in that, like, I'm rooting for this guy to make his way to the title.
Yeah.
Like, Sean Strickland isn't my guy, but I was kind of like, damn, I mean, he did it. That's an impressive thing for that dude to overcome what he's overcome and make it. But I'm like, I can separate the two things on being like, I think he's an idiot when he says certain things. And I go, not my jam. But he walked down Izzy, who's a very technical fighter, and you go, damn, respect, dude. Good for you.
Sean Strickland's a beast, man. You know, people like hate on him because of his persona, but it's the same thing. It's just like, you know, it's like play acting. It's like a drama. It's like a show. These are both like, what we're doing as like athletes is like putting on a show for like a group of people, like fans, you know?
And I think that's why I usually draw that line of like, okay, he's doing this to sell fights, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking about this yesterday when we were watching some fights here. As I go, we're very compelled on seeing those moments after the fight to see what they said to each other. And I just thought we hit a weird low when all of a sudden there's a moment where Izzy's like, don't disrespect my family. And you go, sure, okay. And he goes, yeah, and I know you thought that I fucked my dog. And I go, are we really here? This is such a very strange place to be in MMA. Like, and yet we get that catharsis of like Sean Strickland going like, hey man, no, I didn't mean any of that. Hey, and he's raising his hand and I go, I think this is supposed to make me feel better.
Yeah.
And I actually feel worse because it's just like, we could not do that dumb. Like, talk about him painting his nails. Talk about him being this, whatever. But like, I just thought that's how amateur it is because it gets diluted from like, man, Chael to this, Connor to this. You see the progression of that shit talk. But let's go ahead and reverse course here. I wanted to ask the second follow-up question, which is, would you ever see yourself doing another Bloodsport kind of event?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely focused a lot more on like mixed martial arts right now. I mean, it was definitely like an enjoyable experience, and I really liked it. But the thing is, like, I just don't train like pro wrestling. You know what I mean? And that's like a very specific type of move set that you like need to know. So like, yeah, I mean, like if I really wanted to like pursue that, maybe, you know. But I think I'm just more interested in the technical aspects of
And
martial
as you
arts.
should, because you have great momentum. I was just worried because when I saw a ring with no ropes, there is a part of me that just is like, no, I'm used to this being here, like this little give. So
Yeah, kind of scary. It's fun. It's fun wrestling on that thing though because there's so much bounce. You know, and if like you get slammed on it, you bounce all the way back up. You know, so it's just like I don't know. It's just like very dynamic. It's like wrestling like your little brother, like
in a
you
bounce
know, like
castle or something.
Yeah, or like on a bed. You know, you like body slam. You know, and then you guys just like do a backflip off it. Yeah, it was pretty similar to that.
That's pretty sick. Well, hey man, that just is the type of dope shit that when you're old and someone's asking you what you did in your life, you're like, oh yeah, I did one of those. That was fun.
Yeah. You know what's funny is like all my friends that saw that were so extremely stoked on that, so much more so than they were like any of my MMA fights. Really, they're like, dude, I'm losing my mind. You're gonna be on Bloodsport. You're gonna be a pro wrestler, dude. That's so sick. Like I can say I know a pro wrestler. I'm like, that's cool. I mean, you know, you guys know I'm a fighter too, right? Like,
I think what it is, from my perspective, and I'll tell you how it worked in a reverse way, which is I'm photographing you, and I'm like, I know I've seen you fight, and I could picture you at Fighters Rep, and I'm like, I think I've even photographed some of those fights, and I know I've seen you back at different places, Burbank, Commerce, like I feel like I've seen you fight multiple places. And then it was when I was photographing, and I think, oh, I should interview him. Where else? And I had that aha moment where I go, he was on that card of Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. And it literally is my Kaiser Soze moment where I just kind of put everything together. I'm like, oh my God, that's the guy. I go, well, we're obviously going to have to talk about that. But to me, when you guys are so stoked about it, I think the reaction I was having was a slight unexpectedness because of how good you are as a fighter and how you are. And I think that one of the things that I look for is you can interview a lot of people, but you have to have a few markers for me. One is usually a good fight. We'll set it off. 2, consistency. So seeing you at multiple things. 3 is usually like, what are the things you do outside of this? Bloodsport. Oh, that's kind of unique. I don't know too many people who have that. In fact, it's less than 50 guys who can say they've been on it.
Yeah.
That's a very unique thing.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, how do you respond when we interact? And all of your interactions were so professional and so cool. And I just thought, all right, he's somebody who we can get down with in that way. And let's see what that conversation looks like. But I have a point of, if I've seen your work and I respect your work, we talk. And
Thanks,
that's
man.
usually what it comes down
I
to.
love you too.
Well, all right. Good. I'm glad that's where we got to.
Bros, dude.
I was like, bro, we haven't even gotten to the main part of the interview. So now I'm going to get to the shitty parts. All right. What made you cry when you were growing up? No, I'm just kidding. Let's get to this past fight. This was Up Next Fighting. How did this fight come together? And how long did you have for a camp for this one?
This camp was about 5 weeks long. Basically, just Josh sent me. He's like, "Hey, are you gonna be healthy enough to fight this dude in 5 weeks?" I was dealing with some injuries that were kind of making it difficult for me to train at my full capacity. But I was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's give it a shot. You know, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, you know, I might die. You know what I'm saying? But like, you know, victory or Valhalla. You know, fuck it." So yeah, I accepted the fight, and I decided to train around the injuries and like work with as much volume and consistency as I could, you know, given the nature of those injuries. But yeah, I managed to actually get in pretty good shape. I was like a little bit lower, like I guess you could say like intensity, like when it came to like grappling and like wrestling and stuff. But I focused a lot on my cardio and a lot of like weightlifting and basically just striking and kickboxing. And my jiu-jitsu, I could still do like a fair amount of jiu-jitsu as well. So yeah, we just decided to go for it, and I just felt like I could absolutely win this fight. We didn't really know too much about the guy that I was going to fight, but there was like a little bit of tape on him. But from what I saw, like I was just like, I can win this. So I just had faith in myself and went for it. You know,
I gotta imagine the type of intensity that comes with a Josh Barnett saying like, "Hey, you good? You want to do this fight?" Because you know he's already gone through a sense of, yeah, I think you should do this fight. If he's asking you.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's already him being like, are you going to affirm my belief that you should take this fight?
Yeah, Josh is always watching, man, and he's always judging, and he's always got like some kind of like, you know, like cold, steely gaze on you. Even if you feel like he's not paying attention, he's always paying attention, you know. So like him him thinking that I could do it, I was just like, yeah, I should just go for it, you know.
Yeah.
I have faith in my coaches.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not just Josh; it was Chad too, and Savant.
That's what's up. That's
Yeah.
really cool. And I mean, dude, Savant's awesome.
Yeah.
Chad's awesome. Like, what a murderer's row of guys.
Yeah, the sensei, dude.
That's what's up. Okay, so you knew that was the case. When somebody can't train to their fullest extent, and I get, like, you know, your jiu-jitsu, I get if you don't want to train that because it's smarter to kind of go around that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the hardest thing to train around when you are in those particular areas where you're like, you have an end goal, you don't want to do dumb training, but you do need to be consistent with how you're training. So what is one of the things that you kind of have to look around and do when you're doing that?
I mean, basically just like really high impact, like, you know, like wrestling slams and stuff like that, and making sure that you don't go like 100% in like MMA sparring with like little gloves. You definitely want to avoid that as much as possible. But I mean, injuries are just like a fact of like mixed martial arts. You know, it's a combat sport. It's high contact. You know, it's high impact. So there's just like always gonna be something. So really, you just have to be like focused and dedicated and sort of like mentally consistent. You know. Really, the hardest part for me was just like the mental aspect of it, because I went through like weeks of having shitty fucking sessions, you know, like always hurting myself, always feeling like I was getting beat up, you know. But I mean, I trained at CMMA, and it's like a murderer's row over there, so you know. It was really the most difficult part was like the mental aspect of it for me. Is just like dealing with the injuries, being like, am I going to even be able to do this? Am I getting my ass kicked by this kid that I should completely like win against? You know, like, am I going to, you know, like, should I do this? But eventually, you know, it was really just about having faith in myself and like knowing that I could still put the work in and still be in good shape, and knowing that I was good enough in certain aspects to be able to like pull myself through like any encounter with basically any guy in this weight class around here, you know?
That's what's up. That's awesome. Let's get to the actual fight itself. Now, we're going to do a technique breakdown a little bit later, but I do like to get a general vibe of the day. And one thing that kind of stuck out to me, and especially as the guy taking a photo, is you walked out first. Okay. Gentleman who you're fighting walks out and kind of gets in your face.
Yeah.
And what really stuck out to me was the non-expression of, okay, like this doesn't faze you. You're just like, all right, cool, that's what you're doing. And then you go to business. But when that happens, what are you thinking when that dude is getting that close to your face? Because I can't read you when that happened.
I'm thinking, I got something for you. I'm going to lay the hammer down on you. It's called Fudoshin. It's a immovable spirit. It's like a concept in like Zen Buddhism, and like it's applicable to the martial arts. It's just basically just having one center of your, like a center of like your consciousness, and like it's right here, like underneath your navel. It's like a breathing technique essentially, you know? And just knowing that that is so centered that there's nothing that can move you from your goal. And that's something that I just like think about pretty often, you know, like it's something that I like try to practice, like when I'm sparring, when I'm training, when I'm just like existing, you know, just like one goal, one vision, one outcome, like no matter how it happens, basically. It's like a samurai thing.
That's awesome. And obviously, thank you for sharing that, because that's actually a very unique thing that I don't think most people have. I'll tell you the comedian version of that, which is if somebody does that to you and they get in your face, your first thought is, okay, this dude's about to get clowned and he doesn't know it yet. But the fighter version is, oh, I'm just going to knock this dude out. So I've had people who've gotten in my face, and I have been told, not to your extent, but that I have a very dead face when stuff like that happens. And I just go, okay. Like, it just doesn't faze me, because I just think, what do you think you're going to do? Like,
what's going to happen? Are you going to fight harder? You know what I mean?
like
you're going to beat me up more? You know? Like,
it just seems like a very pronounced way of saying, like, we're fighting. And you go, no shit, dude, we're in a cage.
Well, that just gave me like more insight sort of into like his like mental state, because that wasn't the first, you know, instance of that happening. It was like, you know, like the whole, like at the weigh-ins, like during the fighter meeting, like there was like a lot of gamesmanship on his regard. Like he kept on talking to me, he kept on getting in my face, kind of like being like, you ready? You're going to go to sleep, you know, shit like that. He like shoulder checked me, like, you know, like little things of that nature. and I could just see like the waves of like emotion happening, you know? And then we had this one specific moment with each other when we had like, they were like introducing the fighters, and we had like a little face off in the middle of the cage, like right beforehand. And he did the same thing. He got in my face. He's like, "You ready? You ready?" And I just didn't give him anything, you know? I was completely impassive. And then we like retreated to the corners of the cage, and I maintained my eye contact with him. And then I was like, "We're gonna do this. You ready for this?" And I was just like kind of smiling at him, and he was like, got scared, you know? He like looked away, you know? And like in that moment, I was just like, it's just, you know, fear, bravado.
Yeah. It just, I didn't know all of that.
Yeah.
All you see is what's in the cage. So you just have this moment of, this just feels weird, you know, like.
I mean, he was a young kid, you know what I mean? He was
Yeah.
like maybe 22, 23. Had just come over from another country. He's, you know, got a lot of pressure on himself. He's got his whole family watching. It's his first fight over here. Like, you know, he's like really just trying to like pump himself up. And the worst thing that I could have done for me, like strategically, would be to like engage in that more and more, you know, like in that sort of play of emotions. But really, I'm just ice cold.
Yeah, no, you definitely kept a good face. And I saw in that moment, and no disrespect to anybody, but I saw in that moment the fight transfer to you without even starting. Because I just go like, dude, you're not reacting. This is now favoring you.
Yeah.
Just by your reaction, it tells me under fire, you're going to be just fine with whatever he throws at you. I, of course, don't know the exact outcome. I just go, all right, all right, we'll see. What I should say, though, is I really just wish that some fighters would find more authentic ways to get through some of their trauma, because there's a part of me that when somebody does something like that, that I really just want them to pronounce what it is that is going on in their head. Like, "I hate you, Dad." And then like they run away from you. And it's like, and I go, see, that's more real. I want to see someone say some real ridiculous shit. I'll be like, "This is for 4th grade, man. You get out here, man. You fight me now." Because I didn't get to go to recess one day, and it was tough, man. Because that to me is more what it reads as, rather than "I'm gonna fuck you up." It's like, dude, what the fuck are you dealing with? I got a number for a guy if you need to call somebody, bro.
Well, I wouldn't say that most, you know, professional mixed martial artists have like the deepest level of self-reflection. You know, it's definitely, you do this because you're transferring some other like thing that happened to you, you know, like into a different like kind of like realm where you actually have power, you know. But yeah, I think that would definitely help a lot of guys, just like to get to the root of like why they do things, you know. And I think that's a big part of the reason why I do it, is because I'm very like interested in my own motivations and human motivations as a whole.
Interesting. We'll get to that. I do want to ask, how did you celebrate? Because a moment like that, super dope. It seems like you get this kind of storybook knockout. Like, you look at that and you just go like, dude, I would love to have one of those. That's a dope thing. And then, dude, they wasted no time. Our friends over at I Capture Violence, they had a great angle on it. And I think they showed me it. Yeah. And they were just like, "Yo, did you see this?" And I was like, holy shit, that's a fucking great footage. They tag you, and like, you have a highlight before you've probably even made it home that people have tagged you in. And I thought that was so dope. So what does that feel like, and what do you do to celebrate?
Yeah, it felt pretty good. It was all right. Same thing, you know. It's just, I mean, like, it's nice, and you know, everybody like responding to it like really well. But you know, I'm kind of like in pursuit of like these really specific moments of flow, you know. So like the moment in itself was like more than enough. So I just like went and hung out with my friends afterwards. You know, we got a pina colada, then just went home, just fell asleep. You know.
When you say a pina colada, that was not the drink I would have.
Yeah, we went to a tiki bar right afterwards.
There
you know?
we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
the homies went. They decided to go meet me up over there. So
I could have put 45 other drinks in front of that one. But I guess if that's the case, is that the go-to celebration drink, or just because of the theme of the tiki bar?
No, I was just there, you know. So I just got a pina colada.
Okay, let me ask
going
this.
with flow.
Good for you. Oh, yes. So flow is going to make its way into this interview 3 more times. I can guarantee that. But I want to know, if you do have an option and you are partaking in drinks, what is the drink of choice?
I'll do a shot of beer.
Shot of beer?
Shot of beer, yeah.
Well, okay. Which shot, which beer?
I usually do like a little bit of Chinar and Mezcal and a Pilsner. I'm a bartender, so, you know.
This all comes together now.
Yeah.
All right. So my man is informed. He's like, no. I'm getting an order that will definitely tip a bartender well as well. So
Yeah, for sure.
I like the idea of that. How'd you get into bartending?
I started bartending when I was maybe like 24 or 25, I think. I I got a job working in a restaurant as a waiter when I was like 22. I'd like just moved back to Miami and like didn't really have any prospects and didn't know what I was doing, so I got a job working there. And that allowed me basically enough time and enough freedom to be able to like train almost as much as I needed to, you know? So like I started kind of doing like martial arts more seriously like at that time, you know? And then I eventually was like, man, serving sucks. I kind of want to bartend, you know? So I sort of pestered the manager to let me bartend at this like tapas restaurant that I was working at. And yeah, one day the bartender just walked out in the middle of his shift. And he's like, Diego, do you want to bartend? And I was like, okay, you know? So yeah, basically I just jumped into doing it. Didn't have the first fucking clue what I was doing. Got my ass kicked for like 3 months. And then I just, you know, kind of figured it out and that was it, you know?
So I like that yours was an emergency situation that happened where they go, hey, you know those times that you asked me to be a bartender?
I was like, I'll do it, you know? Just go for it. You know, what's the worst that could happen?
I mean, that is one of those jobs that, yes, it would be nice to be a little bit more prepared for, but maybe you could figure out a lot of it on the job. And
nobody's going to die. They might scream at you a little bit, but
they definitely will scream at you.
Yeah.
Okay, in that same vein, what is the best thing you can do to a bartender and the worst thing you can do to a bartender?
Shit. I mean, definitely don't get too drunk and act like it's complete jerk off, you know? Like, that's probably the worst thing you can do. Best thing you can do, I mean, I personally really appreciate when people are well-behaved, they're polite, they sit there, they don't act like complete doofuses, you know, they're not way too needy about everything, and they just, you know, act like a normal individual. Like a normal human being.
Let's ask this then. How do I get served faster? Because
you know, that's just gonna happen one way or the other. I mean, the best thing is to be like a regular at a bar, you know, and be like a guy that like is known for like, you know, at least tipping decently, if not tipping like particularly well. But if you're like, if a dude comes up and if you get the bartender, he gives you a shot or whatever, he gives you a beer the first time and you tip him $10, he's probably gonna like go to you a little bit faster the next time. He'll probably give you some free stuff.
Interesting. This is good insight. What is the correct amount to tip? Say it on 3. 1, 2, 3. 20%.
Yeah, 20% probably.
Right. Well, you were supposed
or
to
like $1 on a beer, you know?
You were supposed to say what it was. I was literally counting you off to do
sorry,
it.
my bad.
What terrible flow you just exhibited right there, sir. I was setting it up for you.
I was waiting for you.
You don't wait for me. You're the guy who's getting paid off of this. I'm trying to get you more money. Because the comedic part would have been, I say 20%, you're like 30.
30%. Oh, nah. 20% is good.
At the time,
10, 15, 10, whatever, you know? Just be a normal person.
Hold on. In post, I'm going to make that work.
I'll just write it.
20%.
Yep, exactly. I'm going to cut it in and make it work like a clip that will, no one will be the smarter on that one. Okay. So that's how you get into bartending. That's what you do. I want to actually go back because you've mentioned Miami at some point, which tells me you're not a local. You didn't grow up here, did you?
No, I moved here about 6 years ago.
Okay, great. Let's get into origin story. Where did you grow up and where did you call home first?
I'm originally from Miami, Florida. I was born in Hialeah, and I lived there until I was maybe like, I think 7 or 8, and then my parents got divorced, and then I kind of moved all around Florida, like, you know, going, my dad moved up to West Palm Beach, and then my mom moved up there, and then my mom moved to Coral Springs. She got remarried, and then, you know, I just moved all around. And then I went to school in Gainesville, Florida.
Okay. Gainesville, Florida. How long did you live in Florida for? Was it all the way up until you moved to Los Angeles?
Pretty much, yeah. So I lived in Florida until I was like 22, and then I had plans to move out to San Francisco or to Oakland with an ex-girlfriend of mine. And then I had some family issues happen, and my mom ended up dying, so I had to like kind of move back like pretty much like right away. And I was like 22 or 23, so I had moved from South Florida, like Coral Springs, where my parents were living, and I moved to San Francisco, and then I ended up moving to Miami, and I moved in with my biological father, who I'd actually never lived with before, because that was like kind of like the only place that I had to stay in that time, you know. So yeah, I ended up moving back to Miami, and I lived there for maybe like I think like 5 or 6 years roughly. And then I met my ex-girlfriend, and I was like still had the plans of moving out of Florida because I didn't really want to live in Florida my entire life, you know. So she was just like, come out with me to LA. And so I came out here and visited with her, and she like showed me all this cool stuff, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. So yeah, I just packed up all my stuff and moved out here.
What was the appeal of LA? Because all I ever hear about is what people hate about LA. So what was the appeal of this place to you? Was it just that it was a different place, or was there something that you liked the scene, you liked the different types of vibes that we have in this wonderful city that people do hate?
Well, in California specifically, I like that there's like a lot of access to nature. Like, one of the things that she did to like kind of convince me to move over is that we went out to the desert, we drove through the mountains, and then we checked out the beach like all in the same day, and it took like maybe 4 or 5 hours. I was like, that's not really something that you can like that you have in Florida, you know, like you don't really have like this easy access to nature. And also the fact that there's like such a strong burgeoning MMA scene here, you know, like I had made my pro debut like literally like a week before I moved out here. So I was like already had like the plans of being like a pro MMA fighter. I'd just like done amateur fights up until that point. But I had the opportunity to like have a pro fight, and I decided that I was going to do that and try to pursue that out here as well, you know. And also just, you know, there's a lot of like great food. There's a lot of like great culture out here. There's always stuff to do, you know. There's like a cultural nexus. So I just feel like there's like a lot more opportunity for like stuff that I want to do out here, you know.
Understood. I want to ask this because we now got to get to the part where you started taking martial arts. Where does martial arts enter your life?
Well, I started doing karate when I was a little kid. So I did karate like pretty regularly for maybe like 4 or 5 years, from the time I was like maybe like 5 till the time that I was 10. And then I was pretty serious about it. And then after that, I quit karate and started playing baseball more seriously, because I kind of come from like a baseball playing family. Like my dad or my uncle was like signed to the White Sox, you know, and like my dad was like a, you know, high school baseball teacher. He was like my baseball coach, you know, and I ended up playing baseball pretty seriously, like kind of like, you know, taking it like very, very seriously until I was like 15 or 16. And then I just got really burnt out by it and quit that. And then I think it was partially a combination of like I just had a lot of energy and a lot of like need to like expel my physical energy. And also I was terrified of this guy Ruben that went to my school. It was kind of like this blood kid that got held back a couple grades, you know what I mean? So he was like just like this really fucking jacked like kind of man of a 9th grader or whatever, you know? But I think he was like a couple years older than us. And he was basically just beating the shit out of people like left and right, you know? And he beat up a couple of guys that I knew like pretty badly. And I was like, dude, like, what do I do if Ruben tries to fight me? Like, he's gonna completely annihilate me. So I started like researching technique videos online, you know? And that led me to SureDog.com. And I ended up downloading Igor Vovchanchin and Peter Art's highlight videos. And I was just like, yo, this is insane. So I would like copy those techniques like in my room or whatever, you know what I mean? Like to try and learn them. And eventually I saw a demo of a martial arts school, like they called it like extreme martial arts or whatever, you know, in the mall of the town that I lived in. And so I went and checked it out, and it was like an MMA school, basically. So I just started training there, and then kind of just kept on training.
So you, from the get-go, even though you had more of a focus in karate at the time, because it was an MMA gym, you were kind of getting exposed.
Yeah, I was doing like MMA. I mean, the grappling program there wasn't particularly like strong because the guy was like an American kickboxer type of thing. So like the kickboxing there was like really strong, but the grappling he just like sort of learned it off like some Gracie tapes or whatever, you know what I mean? But then like sold himself as being like, you know, like a mixed martial arts master kind of thing, you know? So I trained there for like I think 2 years when I was 15 to like 17, and then I started training American Top Team.
Nice.
When I was 17.
What was that like at 17?
They let me train in a couple of they used to call it bloqueo. It was like the pro practices. So like I started off doing Jiu-Jitsu and doing like the Muay Thai class there, and the Muay Thai instructor like noticed that I was like relatively talented, and I kind of was just like, yeah, dude, I want to fight. So he talked to, I think it was Ricardo Laborio was like the head coach at the time, and Laborio let me like join in on the pro practices. So yeah, it was kind of a funny formative experience, you know. I remember like doing clinch drills with Jeff Monson when I was like 17. And I was just like, whoa, dude, this guy's a fucking brick. And I remember like rolling with like Thiago Alves and stuff like that. It was like way back in the day, you know. This must have been like, I don't know, like 2006, 2007. So this is before he like fought GSP or anything, you know. He was like still had just gotten into the UFC. So yeah, that was a cool formative experience. But then I ended up going to college up in Gainesville, and I trained at a place called F2, which was like the local martial arts like MMA gym up there in Gainesville, and that's where I had my first couple of amateur fights.
Okay. I want to know this because you were at such a great team at such a young age. What advice do you have to young fighters when they are starting their career at such a young age in MMA, especially if they're at a very, very prominent place like that?
I mean, so I think it's a little bit better to actually get started in like smaller gyms where you have like a better connection with like your instructor, with your coaches, with your sensei, what have you, you know, and focus on the fundamental building blocks of technique. It's always good to start with wrestling. I never wrestled, but I really wish that I did wrestle because I feel like it would have benefited my mixed martial arts career tremendously to start off with that. But yeah, if you can find like a good place where there's amateur fights happening, and you should have a coach that has experience in actual competition, actual events, actual fights, always go for that. But try to start in like a smaller place, and then if you feel like you want to pursue it, there's definitely bigger places that you can go.
Very cool. Very cool. So, and that does inform you so that when you go to these smaller gyms at the time, you know how to create a bond with that coach.
Yeah.
Because I think that is the difficult part when you go to a big gym and you're that young, which is you may not get the attention that you kind of need, especially when they've got to be concerned about these other top tier talent that they're like, hey, we got to put time. This guy's fighting this way. This guy's fighting like this. So it's very difficult to do. You happen to be at a place now where there's a whole system. Like with Chad, there's literally ways that he takes care of all of his guys. I see him flying everywhere, cornering everywhere, and then in some cases having to double book and say like, hey, I need somebody to cover me here and do that. But that's because he has an assembly line of generals now that are all out there. So I think it's kind of one of those things where maybe it worked out the right way, which is you go big team, you go to these smaller teams, you figure out what works for you so that when you get a big team again, you're like, this is the right one.
Yeah, so when I first moved out to California, so like when I moved back to Miami, I was training at MMA Masters, which is also like a pretty big gym, you know, and that was like a pretty brutal gym. And then when I moved out here, I started off training at Fight Academy, which is in Pasadena, which is where Savant is like the owner there. And yeah, I guess you could like consider that like somewhat of a smaller gym because there are like not too many pro guys that train there, but there are pros and the level of instruction is extremely high. But so yeah, I had my first couple of pro fights out here in California, training only with them. And I love Fight Academy, and I think it's a great place, you know, but it was like kind of like a little bit, you know, like I was the only guy in my weight class, like that was like at a pro level that, you know, so like there weren't really like too many guys for me to like train with like consistently. So that's kind of why I started, you know, going back and forth between CMMA and Fight Academy and eventually just going to CMMA full time.
Yeah. And I mean, Savant, years ago, we hosted a jiu-jitsu tournament. I want to call it the Nawaza Challenge.
Nawaza Challenge?
Years ago. And Savant let us use the gym. I think it was but I think it was a different space at the time.
Oh yeah, you used to have it a different part
of
of
brick kind of space. Yeah. And I just remembered being like, this guy has no idea who I am, but we're so grateful that he's letting us come and do this. And ever since then, I don't know how much he remembers me, but I see him all the time. And we have a lot of mutual friends, so I'd like to think it's friendly. But it's one of those things that left such an indelible impression on me on how good his gym was, how nice he was to all of us, how he let us do our thing. And, you know, that was an event 8 years ago where a young up-and-starter by the name of Gordon Ryan won his first major kind of tournament. And you kind of get those moments where you go, there's always history in a lot of these places that people don't know about. But the fact that he was able to give that to the people who were promoting it at the time to make that happen always made me happy. And when I see him coaching, just always stoked to see him out there.
Dude, Savant is a man. I have so much admiration for that guy, man. Like the way that he's like built up like a community around him of just multiple different tiers. Like, and he basically did it out of nothing too. You know, he did it all himself. Savant went and carved a career out of bare knuckle Valetudo fighting basically. And he like went to the IFL, like, you know what I mean? Like this is like in the very beginning stages of when like MMA was like almost like a viable product, you know? And he went and made a awesome career out of it and built a whole community of people around him, and now he's just like a successful gym owner with a successful life. He's got a whole like squad of guys underneath him that like look to him for guidance, you know, like the dude's like a real leader. I really admire him. Yeah. And not to mention he's like an amazing martial artist, dude. Like watching Savant mix motherfuckers up on a Saturday, dude, is like one of my favorite things to do. He's so skilled. So yeah, he was actually kind of like doing all my pads for the last fight, and him and I were the ones that put the game plan together for what we're gonna do to this kid,
That's awesome.
and it came together pretty much perfectly.
I would say pretty much on the dot because of how it looked like. But let's backtrack. Since this show is called Grappling Hour, I always like to know people's first grappling class. So I know that they kind of merge them together, but do you have a memory of your first grappling class?
My first grappling class. Yes, I do. The guy at that place that I was talking about, like that like extreme martial arts school or whatever, his son was like the like kind of like the main guy there that was training or whatever, you know. And I remember he armbarred the fuck out of me like 3 or 4 times.
And you were like, what was your reaction to that?
I was like, whoa, this is cool. And then I went and like looked how to do like armbar defenses online or whatever, you know. This is like back when they like there was no like YouTube or anything, you know. So I would just like look for like judo like instructionals on like how to like defend from an armbar, just like drawings, you know.
You were looking from the old scriptures, and
yeah.
just going like, if I raise my arm like this,
if I do like this or whatever, and I don't let him. I also remember I went to Barnes and Noble and I found this like it was like a grappling manual like type thing, you know. And it was like just like this weird like black and white like kind of like photo like essay of like how to do like all these different holds and stuff like that, you know. And yeah, it was really strange.
You know, in cleaning out my parents' place, I actually found when I was in grad school, I had checked out library books of grappling. Yeah. Because that's when it was starting to be like, well, I don't know how to do this. And YouTube wasn't as prominent, similar to you. Yeah. So I was just kind of like, I need to figure out something. And I remember trying to read some of this and I go, is this shit gonna actually work? Yeah. Like, are they just explaining it terribly? Or am I just this dumb? And then I recognized, oh, I have to go to a class.
Yeah, you actually have to do it.
Well, the reason why I was getting the books, famously, when I went to undergrad and I was watching The Ultimate Fighter and my buddies and I were really getting into it, I was like, oh, there's a science element of this, the grappling side. Okay, I think I can do that. The other stuff, I don't think I'm like a prize fighter. I don't think I'm a prize kickboxer. But I think the grappling, I can kind of see the science that works for me, that I could potentially do that for a bit. And I go, where's the nearest gym? They're like, there's really not one here. Yeah. Oh, shit. Okay. Didn't have a car at the time. Just like, all right, fuck it. I guess I'll wait till I go. Don't pick it up again. You already picked it up. You picked it up once.
What, are you going to reach underneath there or what?
I'm not going to do any of that. I was just going to leave it there. Thank you. Now this goes all the way over here. But after that, they graduating and they decided to open up a gym like minute after I left. Go to grad school. Hey, do you guys have a gym around here? I really want to start training. Yeah, it's like 25 miles away. Shit. Okay. I guess I'm not going to really train. Next thing you know, as soon as I leave, open up a gym.
Yeah.
So right when I made it back to California after those experiences, I joined a gym. I had one day. It was favorable. I liked it. It was a 10th Planet gym. I immediately was like, money, have it. Let's do this. And similar to you, where you kind of have family things come up, where my mom was passing, and I go, shit, I got to take care of matters at the house. It sucks. It impacts your training. And then all of a sudden, you're just kind of like the guy who doesn't show up. And I go, no, I want to be there, and I will be back. I will be back. I'm not going to just not do this forever. And I vowed. I was like, when I come back, it'll be big. And I started doing the gi at the time. So I was like, I think this also works for me too. So having that ability to come back with that perspective allowed me to be more informed. So hearing how you're kind of telling me, oh yeah, I had to look up the ancient scriptures to learn how to grapple. I'm like, me too, dude. Yeah. Legitimately, it was not a fun time. So that's why anytime these guys are talking about instructionals, and they're like, oh yeah, I just downloaded this. I was like,
the
must
BJJ
be nice.
Fanatics, dude. Yeah. I mean, that would have been a really, really good resource for me to have, like when I was 15 years old, dude. But I used to get all kinds of different, like, I would like look up like Savat manuals, you know, I would look up like, you know, like wushu, like Wing Chun, like, you know, like how to do like all those techniques or whatever, you know, like I would just be like in my backyard, like practicing.
That's awesome. Yeah. And yet I also think I don't harp on it too much because I go, I think this is what it was supposed to happen for me. I think, you know, I found it later after I'd already done sports for years in different facets and did speech and debate for years. And then had this come into my life, and I go, all right, this seems cool. I like what this is. And then before you know it, I'm like, oh, I very much love this. So because I don't know for sure you have a version of this that's just for grappling, but where do you find a love for martial arts? Like, where does it become where this isn't just going to be a hobby, this is going to be a way of life?
Man, that's a really good question, dude. It's something that I've been really fascinated with, like, I mean, basically since I initially started taking those classes when I was like 16 or 17. Because like at that time, like MMA was like still sort of like in this kind of like expansionary stage where people were still trying to find new techniques and like trying to like find like the most like efficient way to do all these different like, I don't know, like how to win a fight. Like it was still sort of in its infancy. Like I would say like the early UFCs were like the actual infancy where we like found the building blocks of like what martial arts actually are, like what our unarmed combat actually looks like. But I still think that MMA has a lot of room for development in terms of strategy and technique and like approach to like different like situations or whatever. And that's like kind of like something that I've always been fascinated with. It's like the evolution of like the unarmed combat. But we're seeing it now like on a much larger scale, but like all these techniques, everything that a human can do to another human being in terms of unarmed combat, they've all been discovered or already, you know? And so these are like kind of like ancestral movements, you know? And I think like that's kind of like something that I just have always been really fascinated with is like the kind of like the unbroken, like continued flow of just like human movement and technique. And I think that's also like kind of gone over to like my interest in like other things too, you know, because I like read about like, you know, ancient battles and like generals and stuff like that. So like, yeah, I just like really like the art of war, I guess. The technicality of war.
It's incredibly present in the way that you talk because I recognize certain similar languages to how they are written. So it does show that you're well read in that respect. I am curious, was that something you were doing before you were involved in martial arts? And then if not, when does that kind of intersect? Because I feel like your appreciation for that tradition, that kind of martial arts and reading it and strategies for battle, I don't know that that manifested once you were doing martial arts, if that was something that you carried with you into it.
I mean, I've always been kind of a nerd about things just in general, you know what I mean? And I think like, I mean, it started so early for me. I started when I was like 15, like this like kind of like obsession with this. And it's been ongoing for like, I guess like 20 years now. I'm 35, so, you know. Yeah, I think I've, the love for martial arts, the fact that like when I really learned that I was going to be, that I was just so called to be like a warrior or whatever, I think it was maybe like 22 or 23. It was after I had already had a couple of like amateur fights, actually. I mean, I was like kind of fascinated by it, but I never like really thought of myself as being like a full-time martial artist because like I felt like my personality just like encapsulated so many other things, you know, and I was interested in other things too. But it was just something that I like really wanted to like do to like prove to myself that I could like accomplish it if I wanted to, you know. I just chose the most difficult thing I could think of doing, and I went for it. And so then like that just like slowly turned into like me realizing this image of myself as like just like a warrior. And I think I realized that when I was like 23 that I wanted to do it like seriously, that I wanted to pursue it and get as good as I possibly could at it.
Do you think there's ever an area of which you could have been practicing martial arts but not fighting?
No. I needed to compete. I needed to prove myself that I could do it. I'm called to that situation. I mean, I love to train. And I think martial arts are always going to be part of my life, even after I retire from like, you know, like competing professionally or whatever, you know. But I think I'm really drawn to the intensity of those moments, you know, because it's so raw.
Are you this way about games of Scrabble? Are you this way about...
I'm pretty competitive, yeah.
I mean, I get that. But are you also talking about ancient battle techniques when you're like, motherfucker, that's Uno?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
for sure.
Okay.
All these things coincide. They all crisscross, you know, every interaction that you have, it's like, there's like lessons to be learned from the people that came before us, you know? And the art of war, the art of strategy, you know, like you can use it in like pretty much any interaction that you have, you know? So, I mean, like when I'm bartending, if somebody's being a dick, Fudoshin, you know?
So that same vibe, that same way you carry yourself in that cage when somebody's in your face is the same way that you're carrying yourself when somebody's being a drunken asshole.
Absolutely. Martial arts are like a tool. They're a means to an end for me. They're a way for me to like sharpen myself to be like the best version of human that I can be, you know?
But it sounds like you also were able to take those experiences, because I'm pretty sure you've had more experiences of assholes in a bar than you do necessarily even having a fight in particular. Even though you've had a number of fights, there's a lot of assholes who get drunk. So in a way, that actually prepped you for being so practically calm in those moments.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That's crazy. I would never have assumed any of that. I should ask this. You're essentially a 2-for-1 bartender, though. Like, you get a bartender and security all in one. Have you ever had to step in and be security as well?
I was a bouncer when I was going to college. So I was, I worked security for like 2 years. And yeah, let me tell you, that shit sucked. It was so fucking lame. So, no, when I'm bartending, I have had to do that. But by and large, I've never had to put my hands on anybody to like actually like drag them out of a place, you know? Like in LA in particular, it's like nowhere near like the intensity that it was in Miami, you know? Like people are significantly like more afraid of physical confrontation, I guess you could say, you know? So all it takes is just like a stern look and like a hard word and people are on their way, you know? So,
also, much less cocaine. Not that we don't have our good cocaine here in Los Angeles, but, you know, in Miami, cocaine is your friend whenever you think you can fight.
Yeah.
But that's awesome, and I love hearing all of that. I would like to ask this. You did kind of preview the idea at some point, you know, you may not be competing as aggressively as you are right now, but what do you see as kind of that future post competing for you in terms of how you're going to carry on your martial arts? Like, are you going to be an instructor? Do you find yourself as a cornerman? Like, what do you think that you're going to end up doing?
I think I'm just going to like keep on training. I want to get my black belt eventually in Jiu-Jitsu. So like that'd be like another goal that I would like to like achieve like before I die, you know, like especially in terms of like what I want to be like as a martial artist. But I'm not sure if I necessarily have the personality to be like an instructor, you know, like because I just don't think that I have all the answers to everything. Like where I feel like you kind of need to have that sort of personality where like you have like a set idea of what a technique should look like. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever, you know, just do whatever works for you, you know? So like, I also think that like teaching is like a skill in itself, you know? And it takes like a specific type of personality to be able to like be a teacher and to like have everybody look at you and like be the center of attention in a crowd, you know? And I'm not really like that.
Yeah, but I mean, you have valuable insight. So I think that's the hard part. What I like in instructors and the way that I kind of run my classes is like this. Hey, listen, ask me something. I don't know it. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend to you like I am Keenan Cornelius. I am not Gordon Ryan. I am not those guys. I am the guy leading this instruction for an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're going to ask a really good question. Then I'm going to go, let me figure that out. And then I'm a little bit lucky in the sense that I do have direct lines to a few friends. I'm going to be like, yo, what the fuck do you guys do when this happens? And sometimes they're very prominent guests that are like, oh, dude, fam, it's really dumb. I do this.
Yeah.
And they can guide you on that. And I've always thought, like, everything I know, I like to try and pass on to my students. So there have been rooms that I have had no business being a part of and just been lucky enough to be there. And I go, guys, have I got the X guard for you? Everybody bring it in. I learned this from this guy who is the guy.
Yeah.
And they're always like, yo, that's really cool. And I go, right. But it's based off the presumption I'm not the guy who knows everything.
Yeah.
So when you say that, I'm almost like, well, I kind of want to learn from you because, you know what I mean? Like, this dude was straight up front with me. But there's a group of people who really do expect that, I've got the answers. Don't worry, guys. If there's an emergency, I know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Here's what we're doing. That's cool, too. It's a different thing. I just feel more honest about doing it because you figure you do have something to contribute. And I think it's similar for you where I'd be like, I don't know, man. I feel like there's valuable knowledge to be passed on, especially from those who actually do fight and have had to be resourceful in what they do.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have learned a lot about martial arts in my, 20 plus years of training and competing and, my like just about 20 like fights that I've had, you know what I mean? I've learned a lot about like, just technique in general, but I do feel like I'm very much like a student of the game. I don't feel like I'm the best like in any capacity whatsoever, you know? So I feel like I'm always like trying to improve myself. So like I feel like it'd be a little disingenuous of me to like try to pretend like I'm better than somebody else that like I can show them like, the way, I don't know the way.
I like that we'll return to this and maybe in your second part interview in the future, we'll get you to come back and be like, oh, I had the way. I just got it since the last time, guys.
I figured out the way. Oh, yeah. By the way.
No big, super easy.
Yeah. Actually, it's kind of stupid.
You guys don't know? Whatever. All right. No big. I have to tell you this, man. It has been wonderful to hear about your journey and your way of not only being a true martial artist, but your approach to it. And there is a real intellect that you subscribe in terms of how you build your strategies, but your belief system on why you do it. And I think it's really cool to get those insights.
Thanks, man.
I appreciate learning that because it's different from my experience, but there is some overlap where I go, the parts I don't know are the parts I want to know because I'm not necessarily doing some of those things.
Yeah.
But it is so intriguing to hear what's going on through your head, what helps fulfill you, and what helps fuel you. So I appreciate you being very honest and sharing those things, man.
Dude, of course, man. Thanks for having me, man. It was really nice to talk about this.
This is the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
This is far easier than doing any of the fighting and whatnot. So what I want to do, see that camera right there? That is your camera. What I want you to do, look directly into that camera, and I want you to shout out any sponsors, training partners, anybody who helped you within the past few weeks, whatever you want to give a shout out to. That camera is on you. All yours, Sor.
Big ups to my boys over at CMMA, to my coaches Chad George, Josh Barnett, Savant Young, Dom Clark, Victor Henry, all my homies, all my training partners that helped me through the last camp that allowed me to put that sick-ass knockout together, and to Up Next Fighting for having me. It was always a pleasure to put on a show for you guys.
By the way, quick little note, Dom Clark. I don't know if you'll see this, but I did not say hi to you at that event. I'm very sorry, sir. My man was hiding in his hat, and I just looked around and I go, is that Tom? Fuck, I should have said hi. And then everybody's doing business. He's cornering, I'm photographing. I'm like, I'll see him later. Because I've heard rumor, when Dom was on my show years ago, he told me there was a poker player. And there was nothing more that I wanted to be like, ooh.
He was a poker player?
He plays poker, apparently.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And but he's very chill and cool in his way that I'm like, I would like to see how he plays poker because I'm fascinated by how people transfer these skills to other things. So I kind of got a vibe and I was like, now I want to see it.
Yeah.
So Dom, put a game together.
I'll put a game together for you guys.
Oh, look at that.
I got you. Don't worry. I'm the liaison. I don't know how to play poker, but I'll put it together for you guys.
He's going to read 3 books by the end of this. He's going to be like, oh, I got this. It's all good. But, I always live poker for this reason. There's a little gamesmanship, but it's always good social opportunities. It's a great opportunity to get to know people in a different way. And I feel like all of our interactions in this sport are so physical that, I don't get to talk to these guys.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, yo, bro, are you a person? What do you do?
Yeah.
What do you like to do for fun? And then you get to learn them in a different way. Because I still feel like with this, you definitely get a plethora of knowing somebody very quickly when you roll or train with them. You're like, all right, I know your deal. Yeah. You grew up, blah, blah, blah. You're like this. All right. We know each other very quickly. All right, sir. Well, we're going to do a breakdown segment in a second, but I'm going to close this up. So I'm going to look on over to my camera. My thanks to you, sir. Appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Money interview. And speaking of money, hey, give us some. All you have to do is go on over to HY.PAGE /grappling hour. And if you want to become a member, you just pay $5 a month. That's it. $5 a month. I'm not trying to shake you down here. We're giving you interviews 30 days before everybody else. And for a few extra dollars, you can watch technique breakdowns, including one potentially by this man. Did we cross that threshold? Are we going to get a breakdown of your fight? All right. It was hinging on this interview. And if we didn't do it well, it wasn't going to happen. But anyway, go find that HY.PAGE /grappling hour. Hey, share, and subscribe this interview. If you made it this far into the interview, I don't understand why you can't give us a like, share, and a subscribe. So in the comment section, even if you have nothing to say about this interview, why don't you just say, let's do this. What is your favorite Josh Barnett fight? Tell us that. Even if it has nothing to do with his interview, which, by the way, rude. But tell us that because we love Josh. So we want to give him a shout out on that as well. All right. And join the Grappling Hour Discord so you can find out new information on when new episodes go up and et cetera, advertising copy. And that's
excellent.
It. I think that's what we're going to do right now. I'm going to say, that was just me being a robot pretending to make fun of people who do this for a living. I want to say thank you guys so much for tuning in. It has been a great day for grappling.
We'll see you back on the mats.